Okay, am I on? All right. Hey, hi. Welcome. Um, I'm Dr. D. I'm a relationship therapist in private practice, and I work in New York City, New Jersey, and see clients in Florida as well. And today, we're going to be talking about toxic and unhealthy relationships. And I was posed four questions for this talk, and these a couple things I want to just mention. I'm going to go through the four questions, and then if you have any questions, I think at the end, I'll do my best to answer those. If for some reason I don't get to answer your question or you need more information, I encourage anyone who's listening to reach out to me at hello@kristindavin.com. Be happy to answer any other questions or anything else that comes up for you, just as like an FYI. So today we're going to be looking at four different questions around how to stop having an unhealthy relationship. So today the questions are, how do you tell? I'm going to be reading from some notes too, also because there's a lot of information. Four questions are, how do you tell if you're in a toxic relationship or not? The second question is, what are some issues that both people should raise to avoid the relationship becoming unhealthy? Why do people stay in unhealthy relationships? And should you break up with someone if you're unhappy or work together to create a healthier relationship? And I think these are four fabulous questions. And so I just really want to get started. So one of the first things I want to start with is that um, there's a difference between toxic relationship and unhealthy relationship, right? So many times an unhealthy relationship can become healthy, and oftentimes a toxic relationship, because of what it entails, has become this point of no return. So um, every toxic behavior is unhealthy, but not every unhealthy behavior is toxic. I just want to kind of make that difference. I work with a lot of people individually and in couples every day in my practice, and a lot of them come. They're unhealthy, right? They have unhealthy relationships, but I would not define them as being toxic relationships. I have worked with people who are in toxic relationships, and we work on deciding if they're going to extricate themselves from that toxic relationship, which by and large they do because they're very toxic. And then, like I said, work people that are in unhealthy relationships. So when we talk about unhealthy relationships, we talk about oftentimes these couples or a person has hit a rough spot, and so they recognize their relationship is unhealthy, and they want to try to fix whatever it is that's making the relationship unhealthy. So and then I think that you know when people are in unhealthy relationships, oftentimes, more times than not, there is a willingness for both people to change. Maybe not in equal amounts, but certainly both people recognize it's become unhealthy. And even if the changes are a struggle for them and they struggle to change, they still have an investment in that. Whereas a toxic person or toxic relationship is very lopsided, right? One person is often making all the changes and wants things to be different, and the toxic person is really not doing anything. And then as we go through this process today, the questions are, if you're in a toxic relationship, why you staying, what makes you stay there, how you feeling about that. So I just kind of want to get those two different, those things that are different, the difference between a toxic and an unhealthy relationship. So the first question was posed to me is like, how do you tell if you're in a toxic relationship or not? And I think that, one of the key things to talk about in this regard is to really first talk about what a toxic person is. And I think more importantly, how a toxic person makes you feel. Because, so I'm going to discuss lots of different traits that a toxic person has, but it really is, by and large, in the beginning, a feeling that you like it's how you feel as a person when you're around this person, right? And that's really like the main thing that I want to start with. And so oftentimes, you're going to feel confused or unsure. You might feel drained emotionally, tapped. You feel exhausted around them. You feel like you really can't do anything right. You feel guilty for saying anything. You might feel unsafe. There's some blurred boundaries there. You might experience some constant stress, walking on eggshells, unsure of yourself. And the way this person makes you feel, you might feel sad and depressed, and you really don't feel like yourself. So a lot of times when people come in and or they're questioning the relationship, they one of the things they're going to say is like, I really don't feel like myself. I feel that I really can't do anything right. I'm always, like I said, walking on eggshells. I'm really unsure. They're very predictably unpredictable. And I kind of, you know, I'm kind of circling the wagon is what I'm going to say. They're kind of, trying, going over this direction, trying this, going over that direction, trying that, and nothing's really making anything better. And so it's really, we start off with how this person makes you feel. And I think that's really key, because we all know, most of us know, probably majority of us know that when we feel like something is off, and we feel like we're not ourselves, and we feel like there's something really unhealthy about this relationship. It's just really this strong feeling. And so, uh, what I want to get into a little bit with when I ask you, how do you tell if you're in a toxic relationship? Let's first with that. First is the feeling. The other thing is that, this person they're going to be exhibiting like a lot of highs and lows. They might use manipulation, jealousy. You might say, I think they're gaslighting me, which is a form of a psychological manipulation and abuse. And if you feel like you're, when someone's gaslighting us, we know we're being gaslit, right? It's like they're going to say, that we're going to mistrust our judgment, our decisions. They're going to make us feel crazy. They're gonna tackle your memory, your perception of things, and things like, no, that's not really what I said or what I did. You must be mistaken. If you're in a toxic relationship, obviously, not really obviously, but there's abuse, a lot of manipulation. Could be, physical, emotional abuse, or kind of controlling behaviors. Maybe you find that you don't want to spend as much time with your family and friends anymore, because they're using some type of control, some types of behaviors to control you. They might be judgmental of you. They certainly lack empathy. They certainly can't see your perception of things. They feel it's very, very one-sided. The other thing that they do when you're in a toxic relationship is, um, they have a tendency to be dishonest and lie, and they can also create some fine, even that could be around what they're doing, what they're not doing, around social media. They're very deceitful, and also around finances, right? This could be there's many times that there's some financial infidelity, where they're hiding things. They're not telling you what really the truth is. Maybe they're making it seem like they have more money than they actually do. But this is the way in which they, act in the relationship. And so these are some of the things that you're going to find in relationships. Maybe they're aggressive. They play the victim. They and they might be a Debbie Downer, or they display some narcissistic behaviors. And um, you know, when when you're in a toxic relationship, I mean, I think that many people, maybe people will ask today, I don't know, or I know people ask in general, can these people change? I mean, being a person who works on helping people change every day, I have my reservations, and I'm going to get more into that a little bit later. But I think that um, there are some really critical features about a person who's toxic that are unchangeable. And but there's also those people that do change, as long as there's like a willingness to change. But these relationships, you can really feel how toxic they are. You have these circular conversations. It's very negative, and like I said, it's just the way that you feel. And I think that the people that I not I think the people that I've worked with, that there's just a constant feeling of walking on eggshells and not really knowing. Like Monday, you could be doing something and that was fine. On Tuesday, it's totally turned upside down, and name calling and verbal abuse, and how stupid you are for doing all these things. And so they're very predictably unpredictable, and that's why you feel like you're always walking on eggshells and circling the wagon, because you really never get an idea of like what's acceptable, because everything changes on a daily basis. Um, so 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 that's those are the behaviors of a toxic person, and also some characteristics of a toxic relationship. And again, I'm going to go back and reiterate and compare that, unhealthy relationships, you can have some of these things, but it's very scaled down, versus in a toxic relationship. In an unhealthy relationship, there's many things that can be changed. There's more hope and more promise, and more potential for an unhealthy relationship to become healthy. So the next question that was posed are, what are some of the issues that both people should raise to avoid a relationship becoming unhealthy? And I think this is a great question. Um, you know, when I think of a healthy relationship, the words that come in mind is like good, good communication, collaboration. Obviously, curiosity is huge. Warmth, respect, fondness, admiration. There's a safe space. You feel safe in the relationship. You can communicate. You don't feel like you're walking on eggshells. There's moments, there's ups and downs, but you can manage them. And there's empathy. And when you have an unhealthy relationship, sometimes there's a lot of those things that are lacking. For example, you might, talk in circular conversations, go through the same argument over and over again, get stuck. You could yell, you could, maybe be conflict avoidant. You could have poor communication. There could be negativity, little freedom. Maybe the boundaries are blurred. But even saying all of that, I think that there's still again potential for people to change. And so when I'm asked, you know, what are some of the issues that people should avoid? I mean, some of the issues to that couples should talk about to avoid a relationship becoming unhealthy. I first start with I always focus in on the couple strengths. I think we have a tendency to think about all the unhealthy stuff first, but before we think about what are the strengths of the relationship and what ways is the relationship healthy. And I think that's really key because most relationships that are in the healthy realm do have some things that are positive, and each person does bring something positive. But when things are not going well, then we have a tendency to focus on the unhealthy stuff. So what should they raise to avoid? I think that if couples want to prevent their relationship from being unhealthy, then one is to start having those conversations, those exploratory conversations. That would be, what's working in our relationship, and what would make it feel like it's becoming unhealthy. And so, what are like the challenges that are coming up for us right now? Like, what are the main issues? So there could be like there's always a lot of issues in relationships: sex and intimacy, money, extended family, children, if you have them, if you're going to have them. What stage of the relationship are you in? Do you have, are your lifestyles and your values, are they aligned? And I think that um raising issues as to what's working first, and then what are the things that are standing out that you feel could potentially become issues. So if I in talking about having an exploratory conversation is one of those more deeper, more meaningful conversations. It's not like a one and done, like we're going to, have this conversation, we're going to be done with it. Um, Issues, for example, it could be like I said, what are the challenges? I'm going to use money as an example. Um, People could have a long-term approach on money, right? They could say, I want 401k, I want retirement, I want to be able to have money to travel, I want to be able to do these things. But how they get there, because often can be different. So the macro goal is, we both want to have this money for retirement and do these things. The micro, the smaller goals are the steps that are going to get us there. And sometimes those things trip people up. So if someone saves more than they spend, or vice versa, someone has a different relationship with money. Um, those are types of the issues that you want to bring up while things are going well and not waiting, as possibly preempting or being proactive, and what you think or feel might become a potential problem. So we have these things that are healthy, these things could be challenges or unhealthy. How do we start having those conversations while we're still in a good place, so we can start talking about those things? They're going to help, that's going to help our relationship grow even further. The other thing, what are some of the issues what people can raise, is really about, um, do uh, are you guys are both people having circular conversations, and do they kind of keep repeating the same thing over and over again, and is that becoming a problem for us? And so when people do that, they get really stuck in the relationship. They pretty much, when people get in circular conversations, they just keep saying the same thing over and over again. It's like he's going to say what he's going to say, or he or she's going to say whatever. They're both going to just continuously say the same thing over and over again, and after like a few times of saying that, both people know how the other person feels, but they don't really go beyond that. And so when people want to, if they want to be proactive, maybe they're saying, I have a tendency. I think we is the operative word here, not you or I. It's we. I think we have a tendency to get stuck in these types of conversations. And let's just talk a little bit about our communication style. or how we communicate, or why we both feel that we kind of get tripped up, and why we get stuck in these circular conversations. And so, by again being an active participant and not a passive bystander, an active participant in your life and in your relationship will help you to keep the relationship healthier, and it will help you, um, not go down the slippery slope of things becoming unhealthy. So if I could use couple key words here would be like exploratory, more meaningful conversations, being proactive rather than reactive, and being an active participant in your life. After all, this is your relationship. And I think what happens is people know intuitive, they know to a large degree some of the things that could become challenges that in the relationship. And so, people relationships always have challenges and they always have ups and downs, but it's really how people talk about them, right? And how they communicate about them is really key. John Gottman would say, 67% of issues in relationships remain unresolved. It's just how people talk about them that's key. And I think the other thing too, when I read a question like this, when I'm asked a question of, you know, to avoid something becoming unhealthy, I think I'm going to ask the person, how would you operationally define unhealthy? Like, what does unhealthy mean to you? Because we use words, right? And we all have an idea in our mind of what those words mean. And so someone could think, oh, unhealthy is, one thing goes wrong or something like that. When necessarily that might not be the other person, how the other person feels. Like, oh, healthy is what it means for me. Or like I was raised in a certain way, that unhealthy means this. And maybe the other person was raised in a way that unhealthy means that. And so I think that's important to operationally define what what unhealthy looks like. What would be the things that would make a person say or feel like this relationship is unhealthy. Um, and so those are some of the things that when we talk about how can we prevent the relationship becoming unhealthy is, defining what unhealthy is, and then having those conversations that kind of keep you ahead of the game. And also, um, if if you're starting to feel like the relationship is unhealthy, then one would have to wonder why, and are your needs getting met? That also goes around expectations and so forth. So I think those are the types of things that people can start to talk about to stay ahead, right? To say, okay, right, like I said, strengths, we have them, what our challenges, our differences, how can we have a conversation around those and be proactive and be an active participant in our relationship. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. Sometimes I have a tendency to talk too fast. Um, so the next question is, why do people stay in a relationship if they are unhappy? So again, we go to, well, why is that person unhealthy? I mean, unhappy. What does unhappy mean to them? Let's operationally define if they are unhappy. And it could be something that's fixable. It could be something that's not fixable. But we all experience unhappiness, right? In certain ways, and we all experience happiness in certain ways. And so I think that someone has to ask, why am I unhappy in this relationship? Number one. And if I'm saying I'm unhappy, defined by these things, I don't know, different work ethic than me, the values don't line up, the lifestyle doesn't line up, whatever's going on, then why am I staying? And I think that one of the biggest things that people do is that we accept the love that we think we deserve. And so if you feel like you deserve cookie crumbs, then you're going to stay and just take the cookie crumbs. If you feel that you deserve the whole cookie, then if you're not getting the whole cookie, then you'll leave because you're not. So we we if we feel we don't deserve much, then we're not gonna demand more for ourselves. We're going to ask just what we think we deserve. If I deserve this crappy relationship, or I deserve a guy or a person or a woman that's like kind of around, but not really. And that's what I think I deserve, then I'm going to take that. So to answer that, it's like we accept the love we think we deserve. That goes to comfort. Maybe we have low self-esteem. We don't feel like we're worthy of something better. So we don't value ourselves enough. And so we stay. Also, people have a history of being unhappy. So they just feel like, well, this is just another relationship that I'm unhappy in. That's just the norm, what I've come to learn. and live. People have their own belief systems around relationships. So, for example, I do a lot of work with family of origin, first family, and I feel that first family is extremely impactful. And if we feel like, well, relationships are supposed to be arguing all the time, or slamming doors, or a lot of pain or drama, then wouldn't you live what you learn? And then wouldn't you be in those types of relationships? And so even if you're unhappy on some level, if you have a belief system around, well, relationships are supposed to be painful or cause you some pain, or they're supposed to be like this, or there's supposed to be drama or dynamics such as this, then people will continue to stay. If you were raised differently and you find yourself in that type of relationship, wouldn't it would be more challenging, right, for you to stay in that relationship, because it's a misalignment, right? It's like a dissonance, a cognitive dissonance between what you're thinking, your value system, what I should be doing, how I think about or how I feel a relationship should look, and then the behavior. And when those things don't align, right, it causes a lot of friction and a lot of unhappiness. And so, for somewhere in a relationship we're unhappy, and we find ourselves staying, we have to ask ourselves, why do we continue to stay? There's the old sunk cost theory, right? We've had a lot of time and energy into the relationship. We feel like we should still stay. Hey, I'm 3, 4 years in. If I leave, I got to start over again. Yes, you would. However, if you stay another 3 or 4 years, that's another 3 or 4 years you can't get back. And so time waits for nobody. So, we often think, well, I've invested this much time. It's like, sure, but here you are, you're still unhappy, or you are unhappy. You've thought about, you don't want to stay, but if you're going to stay and you're going to take more time in the relationship, just because you've been there 3 or 4 years, does that really mean you have to stay like another 2, 3 or 4 years just because? I think that people do that. They People often stay because they have like an illusion of control. They think that they kind of ignore what's hiding in plain sight, and they minimize the problems. They want to fix their partner. They feel like, if I just stay another 3 or 4 months, he or she said they were going to change. I thought I saw a little bit of change over there. So I'm going to stay. I remain hopeful that maybe this person will change. I think this goes to a very common thing, that why people stay is because it's this intermittent reinforcement behavior. Reinforcement behavior is one of the most difficult behaviors to extinguish. I'll give you an example of that. It's like, you're playing blackjack, and you're at the blackjack table, and every now and again you get a 21, right? So you're like, oh my gosh, I got to stay, I got to double down, because four hands ago I got a 21, so maybe it's going to come around again. Or, oh, a new dealer comes in, or they rearrange the cards or something, or a new person comes in, and all these variables, they affect us in ways that, like, oh, I should leave and take my winnings. I'm only up a few dollars, but every now and again, I get a 21 or I get a blackjack. So as a result of that, I'm going to stay. And so what people do in these relationships is, every now and again, something good happens, right? And it's like, oh, right, this is why I really like him or her, and I really should stay. It just reinforces that negative behavior. Once again, reinforcing the cookie crumbs versus the cookie. And this is why people stay, because they're we're just always assessing, right? It's like, well, yeah, we had a few bad days, but then this happened and that was good for a week. And yeah, the 2 weeks was bad, but then we had that good week. And so it's just intermittently reinforcing the behavior that isn't healthy, even though we continue to stay. So we're reinforcing our ability to stay in that relationship. Like I said, they love their partner, things will change. They might attribute their partner's bad behavior to a specific situation, not who they are as a person, which is very, very important, that we often minimize, or disregard something. And rather than, okay, can I be my own little scientist? Let me take a step back. And what would I tell my friend? What would I say to my friend? If my friend came to me and told me this problem, what would I say to him or her? Can I use that same type of compassion on self as a way for me to really think about, why I'm staying in this relationship? Is this really healthy for me? If I'm going to be my own little scientist, I'm going to figure this out. You know, what makes me stay? I don't know. Is it my family of origin? Is it something that I've learned? Do I not deserve better things? These are the moments, right, that people have to really dig down and think about themselves and why they choose to stay every day. Some people, unfortunately, not some people, I don't know if I want to use unfortunately, maybe just they're in situations where they can't, maybe the financial situation, they have no money, they have no support, they have children. That's a whole different ball game. And so that's why they stay. And that's almost, self-explanatory to some degree. So when people stay, and from the outside, we're always thinking, oh my gosh, why does that person stay in the relationship? Well, lots of reasons. I mean, people stay for lots of reasons, good, bad, and indifferent. You really don't know what's going on behind closed doors. But if you're questioning yourself and why you stay in a relationship that you feel is unhealthy, then maybe it's time to really take a giant leap step back, right? And really think about what is motivating me to stay in this relationship, even though I know on a very rational level I should be leaving, but on an emotional level I'm kind of stuck. And I think those are some things to ask yourself. Uh, and finally, should you break up with someone if you're unhappy or work together? So again, I go to, well, why are you unhappy? Well, how do you define that? And like I said, it depends on how you define unhappy and what the issues are. I mean, some relationships, like very toxic ones, are not salvageable. But if you're thinking about breaking up, uh, you know, I think it's important to ask yourself, like, why am I thinking about that? Is something off? Do I feel something? Is it just because I'm used to maybe some people kind of cut and run, and when things get difficult, they want to leave. But you have to really ask yourself, like, what's making me unhappy? And then and then I think, which I just thought about, was I use the solution focused question a lot, right? I mean, the miracle question, or even like a solution focused approach. Let me keep it in that realm. If you were happier, like what would that look like? If you could say, "Oh, I'm really happy right now in this relationship," what would need to change in that relationship for you to say, "I'm happy"? And is that doable? Is that available to make those changes? And are both people willing to take a look at, if we're unhappy, is there an opportunity for us to work together to make us both happy? Because many times I have to see a silver lining. And so you have to think about, if I'm unhappy, this is why I'm unhappy. But if I could say I'm happier, these things would rise to the top. And then as an individual or a couple, like, what does that mean for us? And then you start talking to your partner, like, how happy are we? Could we be happier? Should we try to salvage this? If we did, what would that look like? Each person would have to participate in that to a large degree. Each person has got to own their own stuff and say, okay, collectively, we're here. It's not you against me, it's us. What are we doing? What do we both feel we need to work on to improve the relationship so that we can stay together to make it healthier? But both people have to be willing to do that. And where is there a commitment from both people to work on the issues? And if there is, then how do you go about doing that? Do you get outside help? Do you read? There's lots of books out there. There's blogs, there's articles, there's all different things that people can do together to suss out and to figure out, like, what the issues are, so that they can become happier in the relationship and create a healthier relationship. And some of the key ingredients of a healthy relationship are, attention, affection, safety, appreciation, good communication skills, listening, validating, acceptance, awareness. And you have to see if your relationship has that. Does it have a strong foundation from which to build on? Is there a mutual respect? Is there kindness? Is there compassion, fondness? Is there integrity? Do you feel safe? Do you trust one another? And then can we build on that? And so, not to keep going back and saying the same thing, but it's like, first you got to operationally define these things. What does happiness mean? What does unhappiness mean? What does it mean for us? What are the issues? What are the challenges? What are the strengths? How can we build on that? And you know, I think that when people come from a place of, I really want to make this work, and I think we can build something healthier, and here's what I think that I contribute to the relationship challenges, and each person says that, but like, collectively, how can we work on this together? I think that's really a big first step. Some people go for outside help. They get a therapist. Lots of therapists out there that work with couples and individuals, there's to help them create something that they really want to. And most of the time, many of us were not raised with good communication skills. So we really have no idea. And a lot of people were raised that way. And so they want something better. And so that's where people start. So I think that I think that there's more hope and promise in an unhealthy relationship versus one that's very toxic. And if you've been in one, you know what it is. And if you haven't been in one, you know that maybe you know people that have, and there's a huge difference. And so if you're in one that's very toxic, you know, I don't know. I mean, there's lots of things out there that people say that people can change. Um, I think it takes a lot of work and effort and insight by the person who's really toxic. But some of these toxic behaviors, you know, I don't. They're really challenging for the person to change, and it means insight and an ego shift. And you know, a lot of them don't have that ability, and so you have to really ask yourself, like, you know, like, what do I want with my life? What kind of relationship do I want, and why do I stay? And I don't want to live this way, and you shouldn't. And then on the flip side, the unhealthy relationship is, you know, there's, like I said, there's more promise for people to change, and there's more opportunity for that to become healthy, because a lot of people do become healthy in unhealthy relationships. And I hope that helps. Hopefully, I didn't, you know, rattle on too much. But if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to help or answer them. And like I said, you know, you can always shoot me an email at hello@kristindavin.com. It's, you know, really just happy to answer any questions or help anybody that needs it. Okay, I was in a toxic relationship for the past 3 years. I'm really sorry to hear that. Now I'm no longer with it, but the memory still haunts me to the core. Is there any solution to get past this? Yeah, I think there is. I think we have a tendency to like. Okay, so in a quick answer, and certainly feel free to email me. I can elaborate more if you need it. We all have these intrusive thoughts, and I think that they come through our mind like all the time, and then but we subconsciously, but consciously we in a way we choose certain thoughts, and then what we do is we tell ourselves like the same narrative, and then we relive that whole trauma over and over again. Versus, okay, I this memory is still haunting me, and it's been 3 years, and how do I want to start to let go of that narrative and let go of that chapter in my life? How do I want to start to heal from that? And what are the moments that I would ask you that you find yourself still haunted by that? Like, what's coming up for you? Are you identifying the triggers? Have you do you do any kind of mindfulness, which is kind of accepting how you're feeling and not passing judgment, and then, you know, distracting yourself and then moving on with that? I think people have a tendency, my experience, not saying it's yours, my experience has been that when they've had this very traumatic incident in a relationship in their life, they will think about it, and then they will tell their story. They will go back and tell themselves the same story. I remember this thing and that thing and this thing, and all these things happened in the relationship. And then they recreate, they retell that same story to themselves. And what happens with your brain is your brain, right? It keeps it the pathway, the neural pathway in your brain, it becomes this groove that's very, very embedded. And it doesn't take much. It doesn't, now maybe one trigger becomes three, becomes four, becomes five intrusive thoughts. And that brain is re-triggered very quickly because we keep telling ourselves the same story, right? Rather than, there's that thought again, and I'm going to replace that negative thought with something positive and start to rewire your brain, which we know that we can do that, and to start doing something different with that thought. Because it's like a tire stuck in mud, right? We keep rocking it back and forth, forward and back, and we get out of the truck, and we're baffled because the tire is even sucked in even more. And if you that's the analogy I use for the neural pathways and how we create these grooves. We know that we can take a right turn, we can pivot, we can start to think about things differently. Like, that was my chapter, I'm going to own it. But I want to become a healthier person, and I don't want to spend as much time and energy thinking about these things. So how can I start to compartmentalize it? How can I start to put limitations on how much time and energy I'm thinking about it? How can I start to create another chapter in my life? And I hope that helps. I'm really sorry. 3 years is a long time. and does a lot of damage. That's for sure. Um, been in offering. I've been offering. Been in offering. I had criminal acting. I I have been in an offering on a relation with this woman for the last 5 years. We didn't talk for a year and I had criminal accident. We still now we have reconnected. Um, okay, so is it that you don't want you want it? I want to understand the question. So you're when you say I've been in an offering, I'm not sure what that means. Like you're offering to be in a relationship with her, and you feel like is it healthy or it, unhealthy, or you've reconnected and you wanted to create a healthy relationship with her? Is that what you're asking me? So I want to make sure that I understand that I answer the question correctly. And so, you know, if people have been together or they've been communicating and they reconnect, there's ways, there's ways you can create a healthy relationship with them. And right, and if you have, if you have any other questions, I mean, there's ways you can start that. Even though you've had a criminal history, you can still, or accident, I should say, you can still start that relationship off if you want to, if both people are willing to start having some open communication, what that means, and what the relationship is going to look like moving forward. And hopefully I answered that question. Um, I mean, lots of people have been in unhealthy and toxic relationships, and there's ways to extricate yourself, and there's ways to make them healthier again. And I hope that this has helped everybody. You're welcome, Kurt. Thanks. Okay, you're welcome. Hope that helped. Like I said, feel free to reach out to me if you want me to expand on that question or anything. I really appreciate that. Like I said, I've worked with lots of people, uh, been in bad relationships, and helping them get out of them. And I'm a product of that. Certainly I've had my own experience with that, and so I really know it's doable, and I know that you can extricate yourself, and I know that you can live a good life by doing certain things to make yourself healthier and better. So I can really empathize with people personally and professionally. And whoever showed up, I appreciate your time. If no one has any other question, I'm gonna sign off. And like I said, feel free to shoot me an email or DM me on Instagram. Sorry, I sent it before. Oh, I'm sorry. Before it's done. She wants to be able to finish it first. Okay, come on. Uh huh. Oh, yeah, yeah. Um, right. Well, I think that maybe the discussion around making a comment on that person's picture. If you've apologized, I think the apology is 5 steps, right? I'm sorry, I was wrong. This is why I was wrong. Making amends and then implementing that. And so I think that maybe I'd also ask your friend what comes up for her, because something to do with trust. Maybe you've reconnected as friends, and all of a sudden you made a comment about some other woman, and so this is a new relationship, or she wants to start off as friends to learn how to trust you. I'm not really sure what her background is, but certainly that would be worthy of a conversation with her, and also asking her what's coming up for her. Um, when you made that comment, and then also you said you've apologized, and is there anything else that she needs you to do, and how do you move past that, and then making a commitment not to do that. I know people are very sensitive about that when it comes to social media, even if they're friends. People are just really sensitive around those things when people make comments about other women or about other men, and it does really affect the relationship and makes a person feel not good about themselves. And then we wonder why you're making that comment, why that person's making a comment about another person, if when most likely it's gonna be hurtful towards the other person. And so I think it's just like you said, you apologized, um, and then maybe having a deeper conversation around what that meant to her, and how that made her feel, and getting a little bit more in depth as to what came up for her. because it sounds like you're just rebuilding that relationship into a friendship. And so it's going to, people are going to be more sensitive, but people are also sensitive to those types of things anyway. You know, social media is, it's helpful till it isn't. And it's good to keep in contact with people, but it's caused the demise of many relationships, blurred lines and no boundaries. So we've been out about 40 minutes, and if I don't know if how long you want me to wait, but if no one has any other questions, they don't feel comfortable putting them up there, certainly, like I said, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to help out in any way, and I really appreciate your time, and everybody that came on. And I hope that's been helpful, and the information has been useful, and you were able to take something from it. Thank you.